All right, so last time we were working with textures and working with the cylinder, and just kind of trying to show you how the textures go onto a cylinder a little bit differently than they go onto a cube or a perfectly rectangular or flat shape. And then we can kind of continue this exercise, and we can look at let's see, not a polygon. Let's make a dome, I believe. There we go. And a cone. How about a cone? A cone will work. All right, so here we have a cone. Let's center him up here. And let's kind of look at some examples of how the textures will go on this guy. I think I can smooth him out. Yes, I can do that. Let's smooth him out. And let's try to put that round Thunderbirds texture from the texture sheet on here. So first of all, we have to decide what side we're going to try to put that Thunderbirds logo on. Okay, so it's a cone. So the front part of it's going to be up here on the y-axis, the back here, left and right. Obviously, you're going to have the top and the bottom. Now, the bottom's not going to have any surface to it because it's a cone. So I'm going to guess that to get that Thunderbird symbol on there the way we want it to look correctly, we're going to need to try to place it onto the top surface. And let's see what happens. So let's go in here. Let's select top. Again, from our tutorial sample sheet, we'll come in here and we'll real carefully select this Thunderbirds logo. Let me blow it up here a little bit to 200% so we can do this real nice and precisely. Again, I can draw my box around it very close. And again, I don't think I mentioned this, but if you don't like the definition of your box the first time, just release the mouse button and you can just redraw it. Okay. So what I'll try to do is get it as close to the sides as I can. And that looks pretty good right there. It looks like the Y on the bottom needs one extra pixel. There we go. And let's hit OK, and let's see what this looks like. It's probably going to look kind of funny on here. Not too bad. It actually went on nice, fairly nice. Okay. Again, this is a round part. Notice we don't have any of the we don't really have any of the black edging that surrounds this logo in the texture sheet. There might be a little bit here on the side. It's tough to see. Let me blow it up here or zoom it in here. Yeah, there's just a little bit. You can just see it on the side here. Okay. So let me show you a way to deal with that or to fix that. Go back into our part texture here. Go back into our properties, and all I want you to do is just shrink your part definition or your texture definition down just a little bit so that it doesn't include any of the extra the black colors. So let me go X size. Let me shrink it down a couple pixels. Let me move it over a couple. Again, let's see, shrink it down in the X. So I'm just moving everything in without having to go back in and redraw my box. I'm moving everything in just a little bit. Y size, say I'll do the same thing here. Y crop, so it's not so far off. And let's see if we can get rid of the black edges on this. Hit OK. And there we go. It's a little bit better. We lost some of the red, but what I'm trying to show you is, especially on a round surface like that or a round texture, there's kind of a way you can get rid of the the red portion of it altogether, or the extra sections that you don't need altogether. Okay, so that actually went on there pretty well. Now, if you're not worried about the red, you just want the actual symbol. We could tighten up this texture definition even more so that it basically just has the white portions of the logo. Let's see, I can draw a box, so it basically just gets the Thunderbird logo. And because of the shape, it's probably going to leave out the red. So it's going to, again, try to apply whatever I've defined. In this case, the bare limits of this logo of the actual Thunderbird. Clean that up a little bit. Y crop, come up, good. And let's see if it actually puts any of the red on it, or if it just places the white. So, okay, and there we go. Notice the red border now is completely gone. So let's look at our texture definition one more time and just see. Let me blow it up to 200% here so we can look at it. And again, this is just an example of how it'll work with textures. So even though we have to make our texture definition a square formula, if you will, or a square definition, it's going to take whatever it's got in a square and it's going to try to apply that as the best as it can to the shape. So in this case, because it's a round shape and we're right at the edges of the Thunderbird logo, it's left out all the red altogether. So there are ways to get around textures and not having the textures do what you want. Okay, just by simply, kind of moving your texture definition in a little bit, moving it out a little bit. Okay, this is a Thunderbird's logo. If we wanted to delete this part and just do a straight disk, we could do that as well. Same deal here. Go F4, and in this case, I think it's still, let's get out of the thing here so I can see how it's oriented. In this case, it's still oriented towards the sky, so in this case, we'd want to pick the top. If I go in here and I do pick the front, by the way, watch what happens. I pick the front. I select a texture to define to it. Okay, you can probably guess what's going to happen. It just doesn't matter what I select here, but it's random. Nothing happens. Okay, so what this is telling you is there is no front to this part. There is no back. There is no side, left or right. And there's not even a bottom, really. If I flip this over, you can see there's no polygon at the bottom. So this particular part only has one side to it. If you go in here to the part texture assignments box, it still has a choice for everything. If the program was really smart and was on its game, all it would allow you to do would be to pick the top. But it's not quite that advanced. But just know that you could put all the textures in here you want for everything except the top, and it's not going to show up. You could try to wrap it. If you tried to wrap it in the z-axis, it might work, but again, your surface is in the y-axis, so that's the only surface you're going to have anything to apply to. So again, I can leave that in there. I can clear it out. So again, the top. Okay, and this time, instead of applying a nice round texture or logo, I'm just going to apply a basic square shape. And we'll see what it does as far as applying a square-shaped texture sample to a round part. So we'll use our numbers here because that's a kind of just a convenient little thing to look at. Hit OK, and let's see what it does. Okay, so you can kind of see that by applying a square texture to a round part, I lose part of that texture. The program is going to do the best it can to apply that texture to the shape, but it's going to run into the limitation of, hey, I can't fit all of that texture definition onto this part, so here's the best I can do, and then you just have to work with that as a designer. All right, so that's an example of a limitation of the program that, in this case, to get that nice square shape on there, as far as the number pattern goes, you're not going to be able to do it. Okay, I think you could probably, if you tried, let's try moving some of these points around and making the thing a little more square shaped. I think we could probably try to do that. It's probably not going to work. Let me undo that. Let me squish the whole part as a whole here, and then squish it down in the Z. Whoops, that's not going to work either. Notice when I have gone in here and again I've used the scaling function, nothing has changed. It's literally let the texture definition scale with the part. But if I come back in here and I hit OK, it didn't change anything. Good. So you can use that to your advantage as well. So just keep in mind when you're working with parts and different shaped parts. Now normally, especially with scenery design, you're not going to use some of these more obscure parts. You're generally going to stick to the cube or the cylinder or just a flat polygon. There's not going to be a lot of use for a cylinder or a sphere or anything like that. All right, so one last part we'll look at is we'll look at a sphere, or a ball, essentially, for lack of a better term. I'll turn on the smoothing so it looks nice and smooth. And again, we'll see the same kind of limitations as far as the program not knowing where the front of the part is, where the back of the part is, where the left or the right. It's basically just going to break it down into halves. And let's show you what happens when we start having the top and the bottom defined as one texture, the left and the right as one texture, and the front and the back as a different texture. So let me start out. We'll select again our tutorial sample here, and we'll just use this tan from the hangar door here. I'll use that on the front and the back. And again, thinking back to what happened with our cylinder, this should cover the entire part in a tan color. So we'll hit OK, And even though it's a perfectly round ball, it doesn't really, it does have a top and a bottom. We don't actually have to define a texture to that. It actually goes ahead and textures the whole thing. And I can actually do this from the expanded view. Center. There we go. All right, so what if I come in here, and again, if I go left and right, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to texture the whole thing. And then in this case, since it's a sphere, if I do, let me show you this here. Let me get rid of the textures. It's back to being blank. If I do top and bottom, we'll do those in a different color. What the heck? If I do top and bottom, we'll use this, I don't know, this little gray sample right here. It's not going to look very good because it's a very small sample and it's got some detail to it, but that's fine. We'll throw some windows in the bottom half there just so you can see the difference. Same deal. It's gonna texture both halves of the hemisphere, or each hemisphere of the sphere here, and so that you actually don't have to touch the other sides. But here's the funny thing. What if I come back in here and I start telling it to put a texture on the front? All right, we're going to run into basically a battle here in the program, and there's my front. So let me hit OK and see what happens. Okay, notice nothing. Okay, nothing showed up. Well, that's kind of funny. Let me try the back. Let me see what happens here. Already got a texture definition in there for the tan area. Okay, again, back, nothing. So in this case, in a sphere, what I believe is going on is that the first two hemispheres of the sphere that you define that cover it are the ones that are controlling at this point. So if I come in here and I go left and right, and I make the left and right, we'll make them white just so we can see if there's any change. I hit OK. Again, notice nothing changed. So in this case, there's a little battle going on here with the sphere within the different sides as to which side is going to control the texturing and which isn't. So generally in a sphere or a cylinder, as far as the sides go, you're just going to have to use two halves of it. Okay. All right, so it's sticking with the initial top and the bottom definition. What happens if I go in here and I delete the bottom? Let's see. Let's clear out the bottom. Okay, now it's all white. Okay, and I believe the white was the left and right. So now the left, it's going with the top half for one, and it's going with the white for the other. Let me get rid of the top, and I believe this will leave us with just an all white sphere. It did. So now the left and right halves, the definition for the left and right halves are controlling. And then obviously if I get rid of left and right, it should clear out to the front and the back. Okay. So that's just my point I'm trying to make with a sphere or some of the more complex shapes, is that sometimes if the program can't necessarily determine what is the front, what is the back, what is the left, what is the right, you may find that just two of those are going to control the overall texture of the part. Okay, and again, we could always fix that by going in and deleting or copying the original part, deleting some of the structure, and then texturing it a little bit differently. And again, I'll show you a real quick example of how we could do that. Alright, so let me get out of my design preview window here. Let me center this guy up. Hello, computer. There we go. And I don't want to do that. Let me leave the top and the bottom half in this tan color. So before I do that, let me copy my part. Copy, and then I'm going to take out, I'm going to remove the middle section of this sphere here and just leave the two top halves. So that would legitimately be like a top and a bottom. Okay, let me paste in the new part. Paste, and then this new part, I've got to remove the two parts that I left behind. So that's going to be these top sections here. Delete those, and now I've left with just this part. Let me go back into this part's definition. Let me clear those out, and you can see when I clear them out that now I have the middle open for texturing, and I can do, let's just do the left and right halves in the white, which I think that definition should still be in there. It is. Good. Okay, select tutorial. Okay, and this should make that middle section white, which it is. Good. Okay. Alright, so that middle section is white. Now what we can do is we can take this part, we can copy this part, and I can remove the parts of this that I don't want anymore. Let me think about how I want to do this real quick. Let's take out that section of it right there. That is not symmetrical. Do not do that. Hang on, stand by. There we go. That section right there. Let me delete that section so you can see we took out that little section. Let me delete its reciprocal part over here, down here. Good. Delete. That leaves us with just the white there. Let me paste. Now I got to take out everything that I didn't take out previously. Delete, and I think I still have to delete each one of these. Delete. So it's a little bit of work, but what I'm getting at here is you know, kind of where there's a will, there's a way, and if you wanna get creative with your textures, you can do that. So now let me take this part and let me clear these out and see what's left over. So now we've got a sphere, which originally we could only define 2 different textures for it for each hemisphere. Now we've got it into where we've got 3 different sets of textures going on in 3 different ways, and you know, you can make it look like just about anything you want to make it look like by, again, using that technique of copying the original part and deleting points or vertices, whatever you want to call them, and then going back in. Okay, and again, like any good part, once we're done with it, let me let's put a texture on the sides here. So that's going to leave, I believe, let's see, we did left and right. Okay, let's do, because we've got these 2 sides, we can still use top or bottom, it's not going to matter. Let me make them some other color that's a little bit brighter that we can see. None of these are going to work for me. Let's just use this little symbol right here. Okay, and we'll see how this puts this on. It might be a little bit funky. The globe, okay. And let's see what happens here. Alright, so good. So it, you know, it's not going to go on there anywhere near perfect, but again, the whole point of this little exercise was to show you that if you needed to texture a ball shape or a sphere shape in different ways and get around the way that the program tries to texture it, you can do that by, you know, just deleting the points and starting over. And again, once you're done with the part, and if you want to make it all one part inside the program, you can do that. Let's go back to part mode. I'll hit A for all. I'll join them all. And as long as I don't touch this now, it's going to stay the way it was. Okay. If I come in here and again I go F4, it's going to go to the last part that I had selected before I joined, and then I hit OK. You can see it's going to change that. Okay. So that's the difference. So again, that's using that whole copy paste cut technique to get the texture the way you want it. But it's also a look at how a part like a sphere or a ball in this case can really kind of mess with the texture definitions you're trying to put on there. So that is working with a sphere. Alright, so let's do one last little exercise here and see if I can get us into a little bit of trouble here. So we'll delete that part. I want to make a pyramid type shape. The easiest way to do that is select the cube and go to point mode. Just select the top 4 points and then scale them all in towards each other. Don't let it move in the y-axis, just let it move in the x and the z-axis. Scale these points all in together until it doesn't scale anymore. Come up here, go part, snap to scale, so you eliminate the extra parts. Okay, so it says 0 points eliminated, which means that it hasn't quite scaled those 4 points down to infinity. There we go. Now we'll try a part, snap to scale, 3 points eliminated. Good. Okay, we'll center our part back up here. Alright, so again, here we go with the top, bottom, left, right. So we still have a front and a back, or, you know, so here's the front up here, here's the back, we have a left and a right. Okay, but we really don't have a top anymore. We took that top section and we kind of got rid of it. So again, thinking about how the part will, or how the texture will get applied to the part, if I come in here and I select top and I try to put a texture on it, let's just see what's going to happen. Let's put something on here that we can recognize. We'll use this again, this air mobility command badge or emblem, and we'll just see how it goes on if I select it to the top. And you can see, even though I eliminated the top by basically squishing it all together, the program is still going to consider the entire upper surface of the pyramid the top, and it's going to try to drape that emblem on top of there. Okay, if I don't want to do that, get rid of that, and I want to select the individual sides, I still should be able to do that by going front, back, left, and right. And let me just test that theory out here by putting a generic texture on the front and seeing what happens. Okay, good. So you can see there, you can barely see it, but it does respect the fact that it does have a front and a back, a left and right, and a bottom even for that matter. But if I try to put a top on there or use the top section, it's going to try to drape that texture across the entire top surface of the part. All right, so that's about all as far as working with the different shapes, the cubes, the cylinders, the discs, cones or the spheres or even pyramids for this matter. And so the next thing we're going to look at is the one I think the one last way that I know of to texture a part, that if sometimes the part is frustrating you and it won't texture, or a little piece of that part won't texture correctly, there is a way to fix that as well. Alright, so the last little thing we're going to do here is we're going to look at how you can actually texture individual polygons on your model. So far we've been limited to texturing the sides, the front, the back, the left and right, the top, the bottom. Where you're not really limited to texturing just the sides. You can actually texture individual polygons inside of a flat surface or a flat side. So let me draw our pyramid again, and let me show you what I mean here. So again, we'll squish our pyramid up here, and that'll work. That'll work. And let me try to snap to scale. Should eliminate 3 points. That's all right. All right. So right now, if we look at this pyramid, we actually have 4, and I guess if you count the top, you technically have 6 different polygons. So let me expand the view. Let me center the guy up here. And let me actually go into a different view here, in the perspective view. Let's take off the solid, zoom it in here, and let me go to polygon mode so that you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. So this part, as far as the program is concerned, has there's a polygon there, so that's 1. There's a polygon there, that's 2. There's 3. There's 4. There's 5, that very little top piece, which we could eliminate, not a big deal, and there's 6. So it technically still has 6 polygons or 6 sides. But remember what happens if I go in here to polygon mode and I go subdivide. It's going to break this one pyramid down into a bunch of different smaller polygons. So now instead of 6, I have a whole bunch more. And the cool thing is that I can actually come in here and I can actually let me make the view normal again. I can actually texture, I can actually texture the individual polygons of a part or a surface in a slightly different method. So let's center this guy up here. Alright, everybody cooperate. There we go. Let's center him up here, and let's select an individual polygon here. Let's say this one right here, because first of all, let me do the sides. Let me do this like normal, or even better, let me hit the top with a color or something, just so that I can show you that this actually does work. We'll hit it with a generic color. This should color the entire top surface of the pyramid, which it did. Okay, but what if I, something's wrong with this, or I need to tweak the texture in a certain area of this pyramid? If I go into my polygon mode, normally we operate in part mode, but if I go into my polygon mode and I scroll around here and I find the actual polygon or area of the part that I need to address, I can actually fix this by actually just texturing this individual little polygon. Alright, so the key to texturing in polygon mode is that you have to texture an individual polygon, is you actually have to be in polygon mode, which is the little poly mode or the triangle symbol. Come up here to polygon in the menu, click on it, and then go all the way to the bottom where it says texture, and click on that. Okay, and now it's going to bring up a polygon texture menu, and it's going to ask you, okay, no texture, do you want a part texture, do you want a custom texture? Alright, so select custom texture, and notice it already says, do you want to use tutorial.bmp? Well, yes, I want to do that. Alright, so that's good. So go ahead and then click on the Texture Properties button, and that'll bring up a familiar screen. Okay, and I don't know if you can see this on the video because it's kind of actually hard to see in the program here, but what it is doing is it is showing us on our texture sheet where this individual polygon is defined. In this case, that individual polygon that we were looking at is a triangle. Okay, if I go back here, you can see down here in the display, it's this polygon that we're trying to texture. Alright, so we come back up in here, and remember my original definition for this part was just a basic square that I drew up here. But of that square, what this is showing you is of that square, that rectangle, this little triangular piece down here is the piece that's actually texturing that polygon. Okay, so what I can do, and here's the cool thing, I can come in here and I can move this polygon around, or move the definition of this polygon around by playing with the little square points on the ends here. So I'm going to give it this stone wall texture here by just simply moving my polygon. And notice the shape that you're going to have to use to define it is going to be the exact same shape as your polygon. So this is a very simple example. It's a three-sided polygon, a triangle basically. So it's very easy to move these points around. You may have a 16-sided polygon, an 8-sided polygon, whatever you have. You're going to have 16, in that case, of these little boogers right here that you're going to have to work with. Alright, so a couple phone calls came in there, I got interrupted, but I think we were talking about polygon textures and how the number of sides on your polygon determines the shape and the structure of this little definition box. This is not like the normal texture definition where you come in here with your mouse and you drag it and you draw a box. If you try that in this polygon texture definition mode, there's nothing happens. There's no dragging. It's literally you have to use your crosshairs and come in here and find these little points and then move these little points around to the section or the part of the texture that you want that polygon to take. Okay, so in this case I want that polygon to take on this little kind of the cinder block or stone block wall right here. So in this case, since it's a triangular shaped polygon, it's only got the 3 points I have to move. I'll move all 3 points down there in roughly the same shape. That helps. You can skew the shape up a little bit, but again, that's going to skew the way the texture looks. Roughly the same shape. I'll press OK, and now let's see what happens to that one little section down here. Looks like it's the back side of the pyramid, and it's the bottom third of that pyramid. Let's see what happens. Okay, and I rotate it around, and if it works, there we go. And let's look at that a little bit closer. So there is no way for me to make this texture by just simply selecting one of the sides. In this case, I think it's the back side. If I selected the back side to texture, and I tried to do this, there's no way from that texture sheet for me to make this possible combination because there's some space in between there, and it's just, I mean, maybe there is, but it's just not going to work unless I draw the texture on the texture sheet just like this. But my point is just because you haven't drawn it like that, that's not necessarily a limitation for your particular part. Now I could go around here and I could make all 4 of those polygons, those bottom polygons, that brick structure. But there's, for the example here, there's no not necessarily a need to do that. However, I will show you one other little problem or feature when you're working with polygon textures. The polygon textures, the individual polygon textures, take precedence over any other textures you have applied to your model. So if I come up here, and originally I had textured the top, if I try to texture the back of this pyramid model, and I try to apply a texture to it, which is fine, I can do that. Let me try to make it white, which I don't know if that's going to affect it or not. No, it didn't affect it. Again, because that top definition is taking precedence right now. But if I do this, there we go. Get rid of the top. What's interesting, it got that one side. But if I just do the back texture, notice that my polygon texture that I've defined for it actually takes precedence over the backside texture. I don't like that white. Let's do another color here so we can see that a little bit better. I didn't like the tan either. Ooh, let's go with this ugly brown down here. That'll work from this door. Alright, so That's interesting. What's going on here is a little artifact. Since I subdivided this pyramid up into multiple polygons, for whatever reason, it is texturing this particular polygon. Even though I've told it to texture the back side of the pyramid, it's picked out this polygon right here, and it's adding that color. Again, we could fix that, but the point of my little demonstration here is to show you that the individual polygon texture that I've chosen is going to take precedence over the actual overall brown polygon texture. So I can go ahead and I can apply different textures to different polygons. So I can come back in here and move, let's say, to this polygon. Now if I hit F4, it'll take me back to my part texture assignments, but because I'm trying to texture a polygon, that's not really what I want to do. I want to stay in polygon mode. I want to go to the polygon menu. I want to go to texture up here. I want to go to custom texture. If it already has tutorial in there, you're set to go. I want to go to texture properties. I want to come into this new properties window, and I want to find that particular polygon. Now notice, because I changed the overall texture definition of that back surface of that pyramid, it's going to show me where that polygon is defined. And right now that polygon is remember I drew the triangle or the rectangle here a couple seconds ago. That polygon represents the section of that rectangle that is textured. So what I'm going to do is just draw the polygon vertices down here a little bit into this concrete texture, and that'll show up on the back side of my pyramid as concrete. Okay. And so now you can see we have a different texture for that particular polygon there. Okay. So using individual polygon textures is a way to clean up your parts sometimes. Sometimes if you have a little bleed through or a little bleed over. For example, when we were doing that round Thunderbirds logo and we had that bleed over on the edges, the little black bleed over, you can actually go into those individual polygons from that disk, and you can actually move the individual polygon texture definition just slightly so that it doesn't get any of the black. So you can actually clean that whole thing up like that. Takes some time to do that, but you can actually clean it up. So don't forget, when you're in polygon mode like this, or when you're texturing in polygon mode, that the individual polygon textures take precedence over any of the side textures or the front or the surface textures. Okay, and then there is one last thing to show you about polygon textures. So let's say I've changed my mind. I don't want this back side to be textured like this. I want to get rid of these polygon textures. Easiest way to get rid of the polygon textures is just select F4, and down here at the bottom in the middle is a button that says clear all polygon textures. I just hit that. It'll ask you if you want to do that. I hit yes, hit OK, and we're back to where we started. Okay, so that is how you texture individual polygons. I think you will find in your modeling that if you have a little bleed over or a little part of the texture because of it, or a little part of the, or piece of the part because of its shape, maybe it's a round shape that isn't quite texturing properly, you can go in there and fix that. If we go back to our cylinder example where the very ends of the texture were being stretched out, I said that you may have to live with that. Well, I guess if I think about it, you could actually go into those individual long lengthwise polygons, and you could texture each one of those polygons so that they look correctly with that siding. Okay, so polygon texturing, it's more work, but it's a way to fix stuff. Okay, and I want to show you one last example of where this really comes in handy. So let me break the video here for a second. Hang on. Alright, so here I have an example of a part, in this case an aircraft part, and if you have a keen eye, this is the top fuselage half of the Predator UAV model that I've been working on for quite some time now. But this is an example of where polygon texturing comes in very handy, especially with aircraft models with this very complex curved shape. Now I have the fuselage part as it looks right now with all the proper polygon textures already set in there, so it's nice and smooth. The paint all lines up. There's no gaps in the paint. There's no blank spots or edges or anything like that, and that's because I've done a lot of work, extensive work up here around the top of the nose where the two halves of this fuselage side join each other, and that takes quite a bit of time to get all that tweaked. But let me go in here to the actual texture for this guy, the left and right, and let me clear all the polygon textures, and let me show you the difference between having polygons that are textured and having polygons that are not textured. So we'll clear all these out. We'll take a look at this guy, and what we should see is Oh, it did. Well, it kind of did it, but let me see if I can do this a little bit more. So it's a little bit more visible. Let me show you the texture first, and we'll start with that, and we'll kind of show you. So here's the texture on the texture sheet, and you can see that the texture for this side of the fuselage is drawn pretty close to the actual shape of the part. There's no extra gray area around the edge or anything like that. It's all pretty much taken basically from the side view of the part and just painted over top of that. So, but if you look at that, there's these areas over here with the background color, this tan color that will tend to bleed through, and that's what's going on right in here in the middle. And let me zoom into that so you can see that. So right here in the middle, you can see where the kind of the two halves of the fuselage come together. You've got these little white areas or tan areas, and that's where the texture just isn't stretching far enough to cover that that part of the fuselage. And again, there's some other colors in here, some pixelation from the compression of the file and all that kind of good stuff. But this is an example where you have to go into the model, and in this case, let me back it off to its wireframe view. And in this case, with all these different polygons in here, in polygon mode, you would have to go in here and you would literally have to one at a time go through these individual polygons like you see me doing now, and until you finally scroll to the one that you want to be on and the one that's affected, and then you can go into that polygon and you can set that polygon's individual texture. Now again, these individual polygons on this model, however many there are, when you go into that texture, that polygon texture properties menu, it's going to look, the actual number, the shape of the polygon is going to be represented in that texture, so it may be hard to find. So let me get up here and see if I can find a good texture for you, or a good polygon to look at. There, that's a good one right there. That's right there on the center line of the fuselage. Let me go up here, go polygon texture. Yes, it's already got the custom one. Let me come into the part here, to the texture, and scroll down and show you where it is. And let me zoom in so you can see that this one already has a polygon texture assigned to it. So I've already obviously worked on this previously, but what I've come in here and done, or actually I take that back, I haven't. This is taking up the original shape, and if you can see this close enough, there's a little gray or a little tan area here that it's picking up, and a little tan area here that it's picking up. Well, what I can do is come in here and just kind of roll this all down, because this part of the fuselage doesn't have a lot of detail to it, so I can just roll this down a little bit so that it only picks up the correct side. So roll all these points down a little bit. We'll go back and look at that polygon and see if that took care of it. And again, this is just a real world example of where you're going to use this, especially with your aircraft modeling. So we'll go back here, we'll turn the view back on to solid, and it should have gotten rid of the little, whoa, there we go. It should have gotten rid of the little effect, or the little bleed over effect at that particular point in the fuselage. And I don't know if you can see that or not. I think it's right in here somewhere, but that's the process by which you go through to get rid of these little parts and bits of the texture that aren't going onto your model properly. Okay, so this is just a real world example of what a use for that would be, especially with aircraft modeling. And it applies to scenery modeling as well. Scenery modeling, obviously you're going to have more right angles, more flat surfaces, fairly simple shapes, not such complex shapes as this whole beast is. This thing is just got all kinds of crazy curves and whatnots in it. So that's the whole model there. But the top fuselage, the bottom fuselage, very curvy, complex shapes, and they just don't take a texture very well. Now the wings take a texture pretty well, but you do have to come up and clean up the wings a little bit at some point. And again, that's where that polygon texture comes into to play. So that's the end of I think most of our basic stuff as far as the videos go. I think we'll start looking at doing some actual, we'll start out by texturing that hangar that we built a couple tutorial videos ago. It's been about 6 months, I think, since we did that, but we'll start out and we'll texture that guy up, and then we'll start into making some actual objects, control towers, aircraft shelters, stuff that you guys can follow along with, and we can do some teaching and learning from that kind of stuff. So come see us in the forums if you have any questions. Thanks for your time.